All right. Well, we're back in the new room for the first time since I moved in here, and today's gonna be arms. My legs are really cooked. I mean, man, my hamstrings exhausted. You know, they are. I mean, I annihilated them. And that's a good thing. It can be good and bad. You don't want to overwork, and injure yourself. But to be able to know that I went in there and I really did some good work and I'm sore after it, does soreness necessarily mean you're growing muscle? No. But I would say that ultimately, if you are getting sore, I think you just feel more accomplished. It's more of a mental thing than anything else. I'm not saying that it correlates, but I know guys who, after the gym, they're cooked and they're like, yeah, I did a good session today of bench. And then they'll go and do bench again the next session when they cycle back through, and they'll do better, but then they'll get off and they're like, damn, I'm not sore. I must not have pushed hard enough. But the effort was there, the intent was there, the purpose was there, and the weights were lifted. Intensity was there. It's just that, like, the actual the stimulus of getting sore afterwards, I think in our brains we're like, you know what, that means I'm growing muscle, I'm doing it right. No pain, no gain. Everybody hears that. And it's not necessarily a one-to-one correlation, but I think guys just like to feel the pain because we associate it with, yes, I worked hard. I went out and pushed myself. And luckily, with how I do it, I'm pretty much sore in whatever I worked for 2-3 days after. And what ends up happening with my split is I get through, and what perfectly happens is I cook my chest, cook my back, cook my legs, and once I get to arms and I finish that the next day after arms, I might be cooked there, but you know what? I'm like, hey, my chest and shoulders are ready for round two. And that's the great part about it. But you also have to be aware enough to not actually push yourself too far. And, we want to push ourselves. And we talk about overtraining. A lot of guys subscribe to the Mike Mentzer theory that, you only need one set to failure. I'm not trying to make fun of him. I have great respect for Mike Mentzer. But those old tapes of him talking about that, yes, eventually we get to the point where the sets are giving us back diminished returns. But I think it's very, very hard to actually truly overtrain. I think it's incredibly hard to accomplish that. But we have to be aware enough with our body to say, you know what? My quads are a little too tender today. So either A, I'm going to take my rest day a little early for legs, or B, I'm going to lighten up on my quads, just maybe lighten up the workout just a tiny bit. Or maybe just focus on hamstrings, focus on calves, something else to where your quads get extra time to rest, and then you're not risking any injury, and you're not having to drop the weight and worry too much about it. I think it comes with experience. The longer you do it, the more you're like, okay, this is how I feel, this is what it means, here's what I'm going to do to combat it. I need better sleep, I need to give myself a little more rest, so on and so forth. So today's going to be armed at the big gym. Got my buddy coming with me. I'm going to be pushing myself as hard as I can, and hopefully, it's going to be a hell of a pump. arms are officially annihilated. That was a really good workout. I will say, in terms of my physique, one of my main shortcomings for me is I have small arms. I really need to work on it. Not just my forearms, but my biceps, my triceps, they need to come up in size. Strength is solid, for my body weight, but when it comes to the actual size of them compared to my back and my chest, I think they're lagging behind, and that's why I have the dedicated arm day. And I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes I will go in, right, and I'll do biceps and I'll do triceps, and I will just feel the muscle so good. You know what I mean? It's the connection is there, and it's specifically largely on triceps that this occurs. Biceps, I always have a decent time feeling it. I feel it in my forearms too. But when I'm doing pushdowns, when I'm doing rope extensions, when I'm doing overhead extensions or skull crushers or whatever, I don't feel my triceps. I feel nearly enough. And I'm looking at myself. I record myself even more than I do sometimes, and I'll just extend, and I'm like, okay, well, it's working, but why the hell am I feeling it in my elbows so much? And that's something I'm gonna have to learn to work out. It sucks. It's gonna be I think triceps are probably gonna be something that I'm gonna have to play catch up on the entire time that I'm working out and bodybuilding. I feel like it's a little bit of a glaring weakness. And I just wonder if it's because I can't feel it. I don't know, but, what I do is I add in exercises where I can feel it. Now, does it necessarily mean it's working it as much? No, but I do exercises enough to where I can assess how my muscles are feeling. This is mainly just in terms of triceps. So at the end of it, if I'm like, you know what, I did my pushdowns, I did my skull crushers, overhead, whatever I did that day, and I'm like, you know what, I just need to feel it a little better. I love to get just the cable itself, in one arm, just extensions, that was a nice pop, and twist at the bottom, and I just feel it greatly in my triceps. No elbow, shenanigans. And then again, I do have, a history of elbow issues just dating back to high school, and it's just something I'm gonna have to get over, and eventually I will. It's a long-term thing. It's not a thing I can get over in a day or in a week. Could there be an aha moment? Yeah, but even then, there's still gonna be moments where I'm like, damn it, I can't feel it enough. But that's gonna be something I'm gonna work on. So, arms are cooked, which means we're back around the chest. It's going to be fun. It's going to be heavy. So, I hope you guys have a great day. And I hope you get your lifts, get your protein in, and I will see you tomorrow for bench.